as we dive into this massive question of why relationships aren't working, I remember we once had a conversation about the history of America and how our grandparents and our parents and our experience of relationship is so different. So can you share with us some of this history?
Totally. Yeah. And if we look at our grandparents, and we can go further back, but let's start with our grandparents. For me, my grandparents were in World War II. So end of World War I, World War II. So in many ways, they had everything taken away from them. And similar to like where we were at COVID, it was this entire new world. So the world was at war. There was the Great Depression. So there was a massive amount of scarcity and lack that was real to a lot of people. And then that shifted, and then through the Industrial Revolution, and then into, well, really what it is like marketing and the commercialization of goods is what gave our parents a tremendous amount of access and false luxury. So some luxury, but just the quantity, right? So then from grandparents who basically are born into or endure extreme lack, parents who go through a seeming abundance of opportunity, but it's also very shallow. It's like the beginning of ads in magazines and TV and that whole machine. So then we're born into this world. So like one generation before us and then us, with this, we're kind of in a whole new world between having to go through the work of resolving our grandparents' lack, doing the work to resolve this need for more, constant need for more, and access to more like our parents had. And we're left unfulfilled. We're left disconnected, and it's a really hard place to be, especially for people who aren't even aware of that. So I think that's the overarching, the arc that American culture's been on. And so it kind of leaves us, you and I in this generation, with a lot of work to do in terms of ancestral healing, but also it gives us a massive opportunity because we can create that next phase. So we can get rid of the excess. We can get rid of all the fluff. We can get rid of all the, I'm just thinking of like KitchenAid ads that our mom would have of all the kitchen equipment, and then our dads, right? All the campers and the cars and all the options that they had. And that came because all of the businesses and corporations came online, right? And so then thinking back to like my grandfather who would save strings from feed bags to make mops, and he would give these mops to people to clean their house from strings of feed bags. Like that's the level of like frugality. And there's a beauty to that and there's a simplicity to that, but there's also this deep core of something's going to come and take away what we have. We have to fight tooth and nail to survive. So that's kind of where I feel like I've recognized that, seen that, to shift out of that and to see, okay, that's where we come from culturally. Where do we want to go? And who do we want to experience that with? And who you experience life with, they come with their ancestral work or patterns, all of that, right?
Yeah, it sounds like our grandparents' time chose who can I survive with. Mm-hmm. Our parents chose who's going to provide for me the lifestyle or the family life that I want. And now we don't really know what the question is. And what I believe the question to ask ourselves is, who can support me in my dharma, in my soul's purpose? And that is the decision to make. What I find happening right now is we are growing and changing so quickly because every day on social media, if you're conscious, you're seeing all like these different videos and you're listening to podcasts and you're doing all this work that obviously the rate of growth is going to be different. And this is a generalization, but tends to be women go first before men. We've had a lot of these conversations, but then even the pathways are different. Totally. Someone can go on the meditation pathway, someone else on the plant medicine pathway, and they're like different places. So what I find hard is, the beauty of that is we're learning and growing. And the shadow side of that is to find someone growing in the same direction at the same level you at the same time. It's impossible.
It's really tough. Yeah. But that only really happens now that we're able to even ask that question. We're able to connect with someone from their dharma and previously, someone's dharma was to have kids, to be a mother, and that's so many people's dharma, and that's an amazing dharma. I mean, it is what our biology is literally for. But now we have this opportunity to build upon that. So it's not to negate that or diminish that in any way. It's like, how do we build upon that and connect with someone? And that's where, of course, you writing books, likewise, books, films, music, all of these things. And what I feel is the question is more about who can you create with? Because, and I feel right now the theme of this, and what we're going to come back to, is creation is the action, but also the surrender. It's that moment of of who we are, how do we express ourselves, how do we show up in the world, and how do we create that next phase? Yes, we can create children, and we can also create these messages, platforms that reach more people than anyone our parents, grandparents ever had, not even access to, but could even fathom.
And what I find happening is a lot of people still aren't in that like creativity as a form of healing and growth pathway. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, let's say you meet someone, you have great chemistry with them, but the way that they chill at the end of a work day is they just like sit down and they watch TV.
Exactly.
So this person's life is, I work, I watch Netflix, and on the weekends I go to the bar and, sometimes go to a concert, and that's life for me. And then sometimes they're in a relationship with someone who's like, I'm sitting with my limiting beliefs and I'm questioning my consciousness and all of these things. Do you think it's even possible for these two people to be in a relationship?
Maybe. There may be someone that perfectly, that's what they desire and how they can support each other, and that's worked for them. I just don't know how sustainable that is, or like why there's such a stark difference in decisions or actions and how that manifests. So I would be hesitant to say that may be the most long-term. It's not what I want, but if someone's there and it works, that's great. But what you just spoke to is recreation. And we were just talking about this previously. We talk about this often, which is the problem, and I can speak for men and for myself, probably the most significant problem that men face is, well, it's the problem they don't face, which is they use recreation and leisure to escape. So sports, entertainment, like you said it earlier, vaping, weed, all the addictions, porn addiction, sexual addiction, sexual hunting addiction, which is just the dating apps and being in that energy of pursuant, using that to find leisure and pleasure, and using that to try to recreate oneself is very unsustainable. It's very taxing. You're spending a lot of energy. So it leaves people depleted, depressed, isolated, and disconnected. So I think that's what most men know now is normal. And that to me is really tragic, because that means that man, how they show up in relationship is from a depleted place. How they show up at work, everything. Because if they're using leisure and recreation to deplete themselves and not recreate themselves, what do they have to give? So then, and this gets into hormones. So if recreation is based on dopamine, then you're only spending, you're doing this external activity or taking something externally to create the dopamine rush. That's an unsustainable hormone to build a life upon. Serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. Creativity, going on walks, being in nature, eating healthfully, lifestyle. If you build your life on those hormones, that's why when you experience something that raises your dopamine, that's great, but you don't seek it out. You don't depend on that. So I think that's the biggest problem men face, especially through porn, sports, entertainment, and I mean, those are the big ones, really. Like, yeah, smoking and drinking, yes, but really the visual addictions are, I think, are so taxing for men.